If at any given moment you are required to enter into the module feeder head for the process of plastic removal from the spike cylinders, always remember to power down the machine and apply your lockout device to the electrical box. Do not rely on a safety switch that powers down the machine when the door is open. Those devices are known to possibly cause failure and allow accidental startup of a machine if lockout is not applied properly. One of the areas where choke-ups occur more frequently during the ginning season are at your incline cleaners. It is not uncommon for new employees to want to assist in the unchoking process, but always be sure to efficiently train the employee of the hazards with the spike cylinders inside the machine, and always apply lockout in a good fashion to the machine, or always power down the machine, apply your lockout device to the electrical box, and wait for the machinery to coast down before you remove any guards and enter inside the machine to start the unchoking process of the cotton. One key thing to remember when applying pressure to your pipe wrench to unchoke the incline cleaner is never use the pipe wrench and guardrails as leverage to apply pressure. One thing that we see that results in falls or slips, causing accidents inside the industry, are employees trying to get better leverage on the pipe wrench by jumping up and using a guardrail. Do not do this, but I'm just showing what you're not supposed to do. A lot of times we'll see employees pushing down and jumping on the pipe wrench to apply better pressure to get the machinery to rotate. When talking about vacuums and stick machines, an area of concern is this access point down here below. In the past, we've seen several accidents resulting in amputations of arms from the elbow down due to employees accessing this door before the machinery is coasted down or not applying sufficient lockout. Always remember to power down machinery, take time to apply the lockout device, and wait for the machinery to coast down before opening the door. If at any given point you must reach in to unchoke this machinery down here below, which is the vacuum, and you're going to be pulling down cotton from inside the transition, it's important to remember to lock out adjoining machinery as well. If you're going to access the vacuum below to unchoke, stick machine should not be running, should be powered down and locked out just as well. Any given time an employee is going to access the access door on the saw side of the machine, it's a good idea to make sure the employee is familiar with the hazards inside the machine. The saws that present themselves inside the grid bars are very sharp, and is an in-running nip point that can get somebody caught in. Anytime there's a new employee who is authorized to do this kind of repair work or maintenance during the season, it's a good idea that they're trained on the hazards beforehand. Maybe take them to the saw side of the stick machine at the start of the season and let them see the inside so they're familiar with the hazards. Another key point to remember is anytime this access door is open, always be sure lockout is in place, it's sufficiently done, and the machine is not coasting down. One thing to remember about gin stand safety is the implementation of guards on each side. These fenders must be pulled in and left the entire time the gin machinery is running. You can see both guards present on each side of the machine. Pulled into the side of the gin stand to not allow accidental access into the drives. Another key tool to use is your personal protective equipment. In the instance of a gin stand, we're talking gin stick. At any given point during the ginning process, a stick may become lodged inside the feeder apron here, causing buildup of cotton. In order to clear that cotton, it's common practice to use a gin stick and push the cotton from side to side. Inside the machine, there is a picker roller down below to break up the cotton as it comes off the slide. If you reach your hand in instead of a gin stick, you could actually accidentally come into contact with that picker roller, causing some damage to the fingers, or in worst case scenario, pulling you in and causing an amputation. Talking about lint cleaner safety in general is a huge topic inside gin safety. This machine is responsible for multiple accidents on a yearly basis, both from cut-ins in the feedworks and also accidental encounters with the rotating saw inside the lint cleaner down below. This is a Moss type lint cleaner. You can see here it is guarded, and to meet trust guidelines, the recommendations are to have a guard in place above to restrict access into the feedworks as the machine is running, as well as keeping grid bars bolted down into place and having the saw access door physically bolted or locked. And you can see here in this instance, this gin in particular applies master locks to latches on the side to restrict access down below. Talking about the lint cleaner safety up above, when this machine chokes up, it's not an uncommon practice to remove this guard in place. And you can see here we will show what happens after the guard is removed, placed down below. The employees will begin to unchoke the machine. Now, If this guard is not put back into place, not only are you out of scope with the trust guidelines, but you're leaving employees at risk for having accidental cut-ins. A lot of times we see sweepers, we see lint cleaner operators, or even just helpers in general making rotations around the gin. When this guard's not in place and they encounter a wad of cotton or something rotating along the side, it's very tempting to reach in and grab that wad of cotton. If an employee climbs up and reaches into the machine, grabs that wad of cotton, he accidentally could come into contact with the speedworks and get his arm pulled in inside. Those accidents result in degloving of the arm up, and we've seen it all the way up to the shoulder multiple times. Another thing that we see inside feedwork safety is a lot of gins will sometimes have issues due to complications with the cotton where it's not feeding into the machine, and they'll spray paint primer or apply tape onto the feedwork rollers to help give it some traction. Never do this with the machine turned on. Always power down the machine, apply your lockout, and paint and rotate manually. Do not do so when the machine is on. We saw several instances in the past where employees are attempting to paint primer onto the rollers with the machine turned on and dropping the roller can in there, getting their hands hung up, and actually resulting in compression injuries and deglovings of the arm. At the same point, another key access point down here below is the saw door. You can see this gin in particular applies a lock and keeps that down. Now this lock and key is kept in the console room. The only person that can open this is the ginner. He'll come and physically do this after lockout has been put in place. After doing so, the machinery can be opened and employees can begin to perform their maintenance down below. Now in here is the danger zone inside this lint cleaner. We have the saw access point and the grid bars, and if an employee comes in accidental contact with this machine while it's still coasting down is where we see those really bad amputations or fingers getting chewed up. Now, a key thing to remember to train employees, especially new employees that have never worked in a gin, if your drives are separated or tied together when this machine is powered down, that saw may take several minutes to coast down. We've seen 2, 3, 4-minute instances until that saw is completely stopped. Do not allow your employees to open this door before the saw is coasted down. At any time when an employee must work around the Tramper area of the press, it's important to not only apply your lockout device to the electrical energy source, but also lock out other energy sources that can come into play. For example, anytime we talk about the press area, you have to take into consideration hydraulic energy as well as gravity. So here we have a really good example during repair season of a Tramper foot being locked out with sufficient chain. You're not going to use just any chain. You've got to use true graded lift chain to be able to hold this Tramper foot up. At any time you have to access the Tramper area during the season, you don't just open the door. Now this Tramper door is retrofitted with a safety switch here that disengages the Tramper from running while the door is open. Just like mentioned before at the pusher area, opening this door and the machine turning off because of the switch is not sufficient lockout. You have to not only turn the machine off at the console, you must apply your lockout device to the energy source to prevent it from accidentally starting back up. Here we have a good example of the access area down into the press pit that is well guarded. You should always have a door put in place with a sign that says authorized personnel only. Your guardrails all the way around the pit entrance, your top rail, mid rail, and toe board. Your top rail is 42 inches, your mid rail is 21 inches, your toe board is a nominal 4 inches. This door stays closed at all times. Nobody accesses down into the pit while the machinery is running. When talking about the access stairs down leading into your press pit, housekeeping is of critical importance. Always maintain your stairs clean and free of any slip, trip, or fall hazards such as hydraulic oil residue, water, buildup cotton, or dust. In the past, we have seen instances where an employee going down into the press pit for being in a hurry on dirty staircases has lost his footing, slipped, and fallen down. In fact, one of the worst ones that we saw was a fractured vertebrae in the neck due to a slip, trip, and fall on the staircase. Down here in the press pit, it's important to always maintain your area clean during the season. You can see here we have a good example. It's during repair season, but on a daily basis, someone must come down in and pick up any external cotton or clean up any hydraulic oil residue. That's done to prevent any kind of possible fires getting out of control or out of hand. Another safety concern down in the press pit, this is an authorized area. Nobody should be down in the press pit while the machinery is turned on and running. If you are down here, you definitely do not want to stick your hands in any in-running nip points where your fingers can get caught. Here we see danger markings marked around certain areas where you should not be sticking your hands in to clean cotton while the ram is going up and down or boxes are rotating. Another key area of concern that we've seen is the maintenance of the dogs up here towards the top of the boxes. At no given point is there any reason acceptable to be climbing up on the boxes while the press is running to be cleaning the dogs out. Yes, the cotton does build up on the dogs and someone must clean that out, but the press must be turned off and locked out before somebody climbs up to do so. Talking about the area here around the press, specifically speaking where you could get your hand caught with the top ram both going up and in the down direction, it's important to attempt to guard by location here. And you can see we have this guarded area built to prevent access into the area mince while the gin is running. This top guard here is put into place to prevent an accidental contact or caught in when the top ram comes back up. You can use this guard. Here we have one made out of clear plastic. It's flexible. Some gins use flashing, some gins use rubber. Anything to prevent an employee from accidentally getting his hand caught as a follow block comes back up out. One other area of concern is attempting to push the cotton back down in the hole. Now if the press is turned off and locked out and you're taking, say, a smaller bale and pushing it back down into the hole, you do so with a stick or one, but if you ever do push down with your leg or your hand, make sure the press is always turned off and locked out. Never stick any limb inside this area when the press is under power, because an accidental rotation of the boxes or the top ram coming back down in can result in a caught in and worst case scenario amputation or fatality. Talking about the forklift, it's important to make sure your operators are certified to be forklift drivers and they're aware of the safety recommendations given, not just by us, but by in general for forklift safety. You always want to make sure your operator is always using his seatbelt anytime the forklift is on and in motion. One big factor that we've seen recently in gins is combating cell phone usage. Your forklift operator should never be sitting on top of the forklift passing time with his cell phone, much less be operating the forklift while he's using his cell phone. Another key thing to remember is to make sure that all warning beacons work. Your horn is working and is in good condition, as well as a safety light behind, and you have your fire extinguisher on hand. Another thing to remember is when refilling your combustible fluid behind, whether you have a propane operated, a gas operated, natural gas operated forklift, it doesn't matter. You never want to be doing so, changing out these containers while smoking a cigarette or doing so in bad weatherly conditions. The last point to remember is while operating a forklift and hauling bales around, you never want to grab more than 4 cotton bales at a time, and you always want to move them throughout the gin and into the loading dock 6 inches off the ground. You do not want to operate with them up 2-3 foot in the air, because you'll change the point at which the forklift can actually tip over due to the weight in front being lifted with the squeezers.